Hi everyone, this will be a short presentation on the media coverage of a recent matter that was heard in front of the International Court of Justice. The matter in question relates to a territorial dispute between the UK and Mauritius over the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean. I've picked three media sources. Two of these are online articles. One is from the Daily Telegraph and the other one from Al Jazeera. And there's a video clip from France 24. Before we launch into the media analysis, it will be useful to go through a brief summary of the territorial dispute. Prior to 1968, Mauritius was a colony of the UK. The Chagos Islands were within the colonial territory. Just 3 years before, in 1965, the UK detached the Chagos Islands from the Mauritian territory. This had the effect of the islands remaining with the UK post-independence, and to date they still are. There are concerns raised by Mauritius in relation to the lawfulness of the detachment of the islands in 1965. Last year, Mauritius put forward a vote in the General Assembly for the matter to be heard in front of the ICJ for an advisory opinion. There was an overwhelming support for Mauritius. The ICJ hearings were conducted in early September this year, and there has been a significant media coverage on the matter. One of the significant concerns that Mauritius raised was that UK did not comply with UN General Assembly Resolution 1514, which was passed in 1960. That is 5 years prior to the accession of the islands. The resolution was formed in the context of a rapid decolonisation that was occurring in the 1960s. Basically, what the resolution states is that the attempt at disruption of national unity and territorial integrity of a country is incompatible with the principles of the UN Charter. Mauritius claims that the UK was in violation of this resolution by dividing the territory of Mauritius prior to its independence. The Daily Telegraph, which is a privately owned national British newspaper publisher, does not deal with this issue at all. The article barely touches on the territorial dispute issue, which is really at the heart of this hearing. The author, in fact, mentions that the islands were purchased by the UK from Mauritius for £3 million at the time, perhaps suggesting that in a very subtle way that the islands were acquired in a lawful manner. Al Jazeera, which is a Qatari state-owned news broadcaster, covers off on UN Resolution 1514 in quite some detail. The author heavily criticises UK's response in relation to the matter. Basically, the UK claims that it was not bound by Resolution 1514 in 1965, as it had abstained from voting on the resolution at the time. Further, the UK contends that the right to self-determination was not established in international law until the 1970s. The author states that this proves that UK, with its imperial past, is continuing to support colonialism today. The third news source, France 24, which is a French national news broadcaster, also does not engage with this issue at all. It is a short video clip which balances extracts from both the UK and Mauritius submissions at the court. However, there's no mention at all regarding UN Resolution 1514. The other significant issue put forward by Mauritius is that it was under duress at the time the islands were separated from the Mauritian territory. At the time this occurred, Mauritius was in the process of gaining independence from the UK, and it was eager to get the independence at all costs, and accepted the terms of the independence, which included the division of its territory. It has been put forward by Mauritius that the acceptance of these terms did not represent the free will of its people at the time, and accordingly the separation of the islands was unlawful. The Telegraph article deals with this issue in some detail. However, the author somewhat dismisses these claims by placing the words unlawful in inverted commas. The Telegraph article very much focuses on the humanitarian side of the matter by time and time again stating that UK accepts responsibility for the shameful way in which the Chagos Islanders were deported in 1965. What it appears to be is that by emphasizing the mistreatment of the islanders, the author is deflecting from the more central question, which is whether UK lawfully separated the islands in 1965. The UK Solicitor General provided an apology for the way the islanders were treated, which the author brings up on many occasions in the article. A commonly used framing technique is to accept a certain claim and thereby rejecting a more serious claim, which is what appears to be done in this article. The Al Jazeera article is in stark contrast. Here the author explicitly states that Mauritius was coerced into accepting the British sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, and Mauritius claims that it was under duress. The France 24 video clip provides footage of the Mauritian representative at the ICJ where allegations against the UK were stated. Extracts from the UK submission has also been provided. Visuals have a stronger framing effect on opinions than text. France 24 appears to be somewhat neutral on the Chagos Island dispute, hence why it's balanced footage from both parties. There could be many reasons why France wishes to remain neutral on this matter, which are outside the scope of this presentation. However, some of the underlying factors could be France's strong bond with the UK, but at the same time, its wish not to upset former French colonies in Africa, who strongly condemned UK's handling of the matter. Brexit has also changed the relationship between the UK and EU members. It is interesting to see that none of the other articles provided any footage from the ICJ hearing itself. A consistent theme in both the Telegraph and Al Jazeera articles is that there's a focus on matters that are not at all part of the ICJ hearing, but could be considered relevant background issues. For instance, the humanitarian focus that the Telegraph article has focused on. There's a picture of an elderly Chagos Island lady looking into the ocean in the Telegraph article, presumably on the shores of Mauritius. Such pictures have a strong framing effect on the reader. Accompanied with the text, it heavily influences the reader to think of the issue as an issue concerning the local islanders and not a territorial dispute between the UK and Mauritius. The Al Jazeera article also focuses on the local islanders, and there's a footage and pictures of islanders. We get to see the poor conditions they are living in and the way they are protesting against the UK. The accompanying text, however, is very different from the Telegraph article. Al Jazeera has framed the issue as UK's and perhaps the West's continued attempt to dominate non-white people around the world. Strong wording is used, such as the service of whiteness, inculcating racism to refer to UK's dealing in the matter. So whilst both articles focus on the mistreatment of the islanders, we can see how it has been used in different ways to influence the reader. The other significant point that has been raised during this dispute is whether the ICJ should provide an advisory opinion on the matter. In the various submissions put forward to the ICJ by various member states, there's a clear division on the issue. The usual supporters of UK, such as US, Australia and Israel, submitted that this is a bilateral dispute between Mauritius and the UK, and it will be a misuse of the advisory opinion provisions under Section 96 of the Charter if the ICJ provided an opinion. The principal distinction between the jurisdiction of the court in contentious cases and its advisory jurisdiction was emphasized. States supporting Mauritius, on the other hand, took a different approach and emphasized the importance of the ICJ to provide advisory opinions, as the refusal would go in favor of states who do not conform with international law. France 24 touches upon this issue in the commentary to the video, where it's mentioned that the UK is arguing that it should be dealt with at a bilateral level. However, the counter-argument to this were not stated in the video. Instead, the commentator states that the UK accepts the mistreatment of the local islanders and the UK apologises for this. The Telegraph comments that the question of sovereignty is purely bilateral and the court should not issue an advisory opinion on it. The Al Jazeera strongly condemns UK and particularly its allies, the US and Israel, for their opposition against the issue being heard in front of the ICJ. So that concludes my media analysis of the ICJ hearing of the Chagos Island dispute. It's a live issue with a lot of interest, so it will be interesting to see how things unfold once the ICJ has provided its advisory opinion. It should be remembered that the advisory opinion is not binding upon the states involved. However, it will have a significant weighting in international law. Thank you very much.